Hello everyone, this is Ilenia from Italy and I welcome you all to this new video for the Heritage for All internship program July-December 2019. The management of tangible rural heritage was surely one of the most challenging topics among those proposed by Heritage for All. Italy and Sardinia were certainly not short on brilliant case studies, but nonetheless I was aiming to discuss this topic from a different perspective. Despite the tangible rural heritage is efficiently managed, is it also relevant to their communities? When talking about rural heritage, although this is not the only facet of such topic, ethnographic collections immediately come to mind, which will also be the focus of this video. And of course, this will be particularly focused on the management of ethnographic collections in Sardinia. Nonetheless, the discussion may be extended to other areas presenting the same issues and, of course, other types of collections. From a museological point of view, ethnographic collections differentiate themselves in the study of European local rural communities and non-Western communities. And this was especially apparent in the use of two different German terms that used to identify ethnographic museums. Volkskunde, the study of European local rural societies and their customs, and Völkerkunde, the study of non-Western ethnographic objects. The latter are often understood as originating from the 16th, 18th centuries cabinets of curiosities, whose purpose was to represent their owners' interests and view on the world. Including exotic objects, they contributed to a neighboring process, implying not only the acknowledgement of any difference between the observer and the observed, but also a hierarchical observation viewpoint and the exclusion of the others from the observer's world, raising imaginary walls or boundaries. What has been the role of ethnographic museums in the persistence of this dichotomy as others thus far? Perfectly in line with the predominant nationalist spirits of the 18th and 19th centuries, that means the emergence and establishment of a national identity as it is understood today, these kind of collections presented a praise of their own cultures as if portrayed in a specific moment in time and remaining unchanged over the years. Nonetheless, they have used a less paternalistic approach than museums displaying non-European collections, because vernaculars before the late 18th centuries were not considered as belonging to a specific territory, but in the light of the new national conscience, the middle class, which emerged and became influent following the Industrial Revolution, started to study local vernaculars along with local folklore and music, as if they were rediscovering something that they had lost for a long time. Therefore, those who lived in rural areas were perceived as the repositories of this genuine knowledge, which over time had been increasingly considered in danger because of the continuing industrialization, and so worthy of protection so to prevent their irreversible disappearance. They were basically the rural equivalent of the non-European noble savage. However, the lack of a consistent adaptation of collections to their contemporary context has created over time a considerable gap between ethnographic museums and their contemporary communities, which nowadays are usually underrepresented at best. This approach to the management of Sardinia's tangible rural heritage has produced an indefinite sense of Sardinian-ness that has been reinforced and replicated through time instead of being questioned, producing a regional identity that is fueled, still today, by its own stereotype. In my personal experience, whenever I visit ethnographic museums here in Sardinia, although I am a local, it feels as looking at the portrait of a society that is very far from the contemporary world. The great variety of colorful traditional costumes, jewelry, and other objects, including a wide range of traditional breads, are presented with detailed information about their composition and use, as well as their area of origin within the island. However, at the end of the visit, I usually wonder where the community has disappeared and how long ago, because the majority of those objects today are almost unknown to the youngest generations, while costumes and jewels are usually worn by the members of local grassroots organizations called Pro Loco during local celebrations like folk or St. Patron festivals, and a large part of traditional breads have now disappeared. In addition, showing a sort of Sardinian-ness, these kind of collections partly represent an old version of the island's community. For example, where are the foreigner communities? The contemporary Sardinia and mainland Italians and African, Chinese, Japanese, and other communities are completely missing. So this double-edged sword, on the one hand, creates a gap in the museum community's relationships, and on the other, might reinforce some visitors' prejudice and also a sense of nostalgia in the locals, then instead of questioning and challenge these these feelings. So our first question was, are these collections relevant to their communities? But what is relevance, and how can ethnographic museums be more relevant to their communities? Drawing on Nina Simon's words, relevance has to do with how likely the new information is to yield conclusions that matter to individuals. In other words, it is not just about people's connections with collections, but about how those collections add meaning to their lives. Some examples will probably clarify this notion. When I first visited the Estonian National Museum in Tartu in April 2019, I was amazed by their long-term tailoring workshops, where visitors could learn more about the Estonian traditional costumes and could also create their own one and even personalize them, of course. Furthermore, during the double Jubilee Song and Dance Festival, My Fatherland is My Love, held in Tallinn last July, the museum offered on-site emergency repairs to folk dancers while also giving a wide range of workshops to the people attending the event. In Japan, instead, following the March 2011 earthquake and tsunami in the Tohoku region, sorry for my Japanese, the Minpaku National Museum of Ethnology, Osaka, formed a disaster relief committee to gather information via a network of university, museums, and archives located in the disaster-struck area, and also organized a series of events featuring the traditional performing arts of those areas. These events, as Mr. Sudo said, could neither rebuild houses nor restore Tohoku's economy, but it represented a new opportunity for the residents of the affected areas to express their hope and determination to restore these communities. These two examples show that museums can not only act as managers and mediators of culture, but should also provide support for their creative communities while giving a new meaning to tradition and culture. Without the many stories they are imbued with, objects are indeed inanimate things with a practical purpose, while when they connect to people, they become powerful mediators of meaning, thus setting the ground for conversations about contemporary and controversial issues such as migrations and racism, for instance. This is why collections need to be constantly questioned. Maintaining Sardinian-ness without even questioning what it means to be Sardinian today and what being Sardinian really means, let alone what real Sardinia is, might be dangerous and counterproductive. This may reinforce some local sense of belonging to their homeland, some visitors' prejudice about islanders being closely bound to their traditions, but it would also deepen the gap with the younger generations and perpetrate a stereotype narrative about Sardinia. Would this kind of approach make Sardinia's ethnographic collection be relevant for next generations? Drawing on Nina Simon's words again, too often museums and cultural heritage institutions expect people to manufacture relevance on their own. However, cognitive scientists know that relevance is inversely correlated with effort. Therefore, familiarity with collections helps. Significantly, it reduces effort, but is not sufficient in itself to manufacture relevance. The next step is to add value to such connection without taking for granted that the importance of the collections is such that it's necessarily relevant for everyone, especially keeping in mind the Sardinia's communities are increasingly more diverse now. Collecting contemporary objects to create a collection representing the current communities might be an idea, as well as offering thematic workshops on the evolution of specific items, from those in the collection to the contemporary ones and the traditional ones in use in the different communities now living in Sardinia. For instance, should a museum preserve a bread calendar, a workshop might focus on the evolution of calendars until today and compare any other traditional calendars from the African, Roma, Chinese, and other communities the museum serves. This because objects may also be used to spark conversations around different topics, such as migration. An example for this may be the exhibition Soggetti migranti dietro le cose e le persone, literally migrant subjects, people behind the things, held in the Pigorini Museum, Rome, in 2013. This exhibition was co-curated with the diaspora communities living in Rome and was focused on journeys and displacement of both people and objects. Another example might be the replication of some objects in the museum collection, such as a wooden musical instrument. This would allow the museum to share the knowledge about the objects and the participants to acquire a deeper knowledge about the manufacturing techniques that might have been used to create them in the past. These kind of approaches might imply an effort in sharing their agency, but this will result also beneficial to museums on many levels. The museum community's relationship would improve. A more diverse audience would feel welcome and engaged by the museum, and the collections would be more relevant to a broader public. In addition, the over-stereotyped narrative about Sardinian-ness, in this case, would shift to a multifaceted representation of the island's traditions and culture. As Ola Engerstrom said, and was cited in Nina Simon's book, The Participatory Museum, think about objects as the reason why people affiliate with a specific other and not just with anyone. For instance, if the object is a job, it will connect me to one set of people, whereas a date will link me to a radically different group. This is common sense, but unfortunately, it's not included in the image of the network diagram that most people imagine when they hear the term social network. The fallacy is to think that social networks are just made up of people. They are not. Social networks consist of people who are connected by a shared objects. I really thank you for watching and hope you leave your opinions in the comments below. See you next time.